We had this idea of this backpack program thing with food for kids, and we had tried it in one school and we wanted to see if we could do it in more schools. And we were really in the beginning stages of that process when my pastor actually told me that someone had told him who had told that person about Innové and said, you should look at this, you should apply for it.
We had a group of screeners that looked at feasibility and viability and match with the church. So that group of screeners handed the group of navigators, which I was a part of, a list of 50 applicants and said, here's the 50 that we think could work, and take it from there. And our job was to whittle that down to about 24 so we could each align one-on-one a navigator to an applicant to shepherd them through the process of judging and hopefully becoming a protege and ultimately getting funded.
These are people that are super helpful. They really want to invest in your organization and they want your mission to be successful in Innové and in that process, but ultimately in the community and making an impact in the community.
So part of that process as a navigator was to review those 50 applicants. And I remember sitting at home and stayed up late one night and got through them all. And the Sheridan Story with Rob was one of the first ones I reviewed. And there was a point in his video where he said, and I'll never forget it, there are over 100,000 kids in the Twin Cities that live in food insecurity and don't know where their next meal is going to come from. And the line that got me was, and it breaks God's heart to see kids go hungry. And I remember getting a little choked up at that and thought, wow, this is going to be a really difficult process if they're all like this. And for some reason that line stuck with me, and it's what drew me into Rob and the Sheridan Story and wanting to work with him. So the very first introduction to Rob was me giving him a call to give him the good news that he'd be moving on in the process. And on that phone call, I basically said, what do you need? And I wanted to make sure that above and beyond everything else, that I was giving Rob and the Sheridan Story what they needed to be successful versus some agenda that I was trying to press through.
Well, the first time I saw Bob, I think was in a Caribou, and really it was, I can't remember all the details, but he was super helpful and excited about what we were doing and wanted to help us with this process in Innové, but also just as an organization wanted to see us succeed so that our mission could come to fruition.
After that initial meeting where Rob started to outline some of his needs, I asked a lot of questions. I challenged Rob on a number of things.
That's where we developed our mission statement, a lot of our communication of how do we explain or communicate what we do in a way that people can understand it.
We want to feed hungry kids on weekends, and here's how we do it. And until Rob could articulate that in one sentence, I wasn't satisfied. It was his work, his words, his idea, and mostly me just bugging him to say, I didn't like that until it got it. So I'm thankful that Rob put up with me for long enough to get to the point where we are today.
Really that time of consistent work and Bob being available and helping through the process was super helpful. And we put together a business plan and everything that whether we won or not would still have been our business plan.
Along the way, part of what we did was introduce him to people in my network, so whether that was nonprofit leaders or leaders of food shelves, some marketing people to test what he had done before.
We also were connected with a lawyer that was really helpful and still is with contracts that we had to develop, even in our application for 501c3.
The process was long. It was a few months, and what started out as some casual conversations and getting to know each other, by the time we were into the week before the judging, it was pretty intense.
So now, I've worked a lot with Bob, and I really just view him sort of as like an older brother that is smart and that I get along with.
I watched his presentation to the judges, and I was nervous the whole time, but he did such a fantastic job. And so by the end of that, we were both high-fiving and feeling pretty good about it. But there was what seemed like an endless wait to hear back from the judges. And I remember getting the call from the judges myself to say that Rob had been chosen as a protege. And I about fell off my chair. I was so excited, and I couldn't wait to call Rob. That was one of the best phone calls I've ever had the chance to make. Because from the beginning of not knowing Sheridan Story to getting really involved in understanding Rob's passion for these kids who are hungry, and then being able to celebrate doing something about that hunger felt so good.
So we were in one school when we applied for Innové, and now a year and a half later we're in 26 schools, reaching about 1,600 kids. It's just been an awesome partnership, and even just the process along the way was huge for us as an organization.